Close your eyes. Listen to Monday.com. Feel the sensation of an AI work platform. So flexible and intuitive, it feels like it was built just for you. Now open your eyes, go to Monday.com, start for free, and finally breathe.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. Glad to have you with me. 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, NASA is releasing a treasure trove of images of the Artemis II mission. They're almost as beautiful as the pictures coming out of the Masters. Not quite, but almost. Now, I mentioned somewhat flippantly in the last hour, how do the flat earthers and the people who say we've never been to the moon, how are they rationalizing, how they're coping with this to prevent making themselves have to admit it? One of the things they often say is that, well, if you look at the images from when we were supposedly on the moon, there are no stars in the background. NASA has released this incredible image, and it is of the sun, or the Earth setting. It's called Earthset. And if you were to see this picture, you would notice that you can see the moon and you can see the Earth, and you cannot actually see any stars. It's just completely dark. And I'm sure people will say, well, this must be CGI, and they left out the stars. So I love photography. I am an amateur photographer. I've taken some pretty awesome pictures. So like I'm actually not a big fan of my own work, but man, I've taken some pictures that are pretty fantastic. Really have. And I like landscapes. I like taking pictures of people. And there is a thing called an aperture. The aperture is the hole in the front of the lens that you can open or close to bring in light, because all pictures rely on light. And when you are in a very bright environment, you have to close the aperture, and the shutter speed needs to be very fast. And when you have stars off in the distance and things are very bright, it's very hard to pick up the stars with a camera, because your immediate foreground shot, in this case of the Earth and the moon with the reflection of light from the sun highlighting the moon, you're not going to be able to see stars in the distance, because the shutter speed is going to be very, very quick and the aperture is going to be very tight, because there's too much light in, and so you can't see them. However, they released another picture, and it is from the far side of the moon, the dark side of the moon, alienating some of you, and it actually was the dark side of the moon, because it was the moon was eclipsing the sun from where Artemis was. And so the far side of the moon was a dark side of the moon. And a funny thing happened, because the moon was eclipsing the sun, you can see stars, because you can open the shutter of the camera further, and you can see Saturn, and you can see Venus, and you can see Mars, and you can see stars, you can see galaxies, all because the moon is blocking out the sun, so you can spend more time, have a slower shutter, keep it open longer, have a wider aperture, and you can see so many amazing stars and planets, because they're really in space, because they're really out there. And now they're coming home. And it's been a remarkable mission. NASA, if you go to nasa.gov, the website, nasa.gov, they have released a pile of pictures. And you can see all those pictures on the website. And they're gorgeous pictures. The Earthset picture is fundamentally historic, a beautiful picture. Now, while we are talking about all these sorts of things, there's another just remarkable, incredible thing happening, and that is more data is coming out about the rescue mission. The rescue mission is even more impressive than we thought. By the way, I need to tell you, at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to be joined by John Delony, the psychologist. We're going to talk about anxiety. A lot of people have it these days. But if you get the show notes, we have this piece in there from James Laporta and Jennifer Jacobs, CBS News, inside the daring mission to rescue a U.S. airman downed in Iran. It is remarkable. The things that we were able to pull off in this is just incredible. CBS News has gotten a lot of inside scoop on the rescue. Let me just begin with this. And again, credit to James Laporta and Jennifer Jacobs at CBS News. The United States scrambled a massive clandestine and fighting force to rescue a weapons system officer who had to eject from his fighter jet over central Iran last week, eventually sending more than 150 aircraft to beat Iranian forces in the race to find the U.S. Air Force colonel. Sources familiar with the situation told CBS. U.S. forces fired 339 munitions over 50 hours of operations. The weapons officer survived nearly 2 days behind enemy lines, sheltering in a rocky mountain crevice, multiple officials familiar with rescue said. The recovery of the downed colonel unfolded against the backdrop of escalating tensions between Washington and Tehran over the Strait of Hormuz, a critical channel of global trade. President Trump halted other planned U.S. military operations against Iran, redirecting attention and resources in a Herculean U.S. government effort to locate and extract the stranded American service member. The search zeroed in on the crew member's beacon and eventually brought him to safety in Kuwait. On Thursday, Mr. Trump was not seen in public when the nation's attention had turned largely to the drama at the Justice Department as he fired Pam Bondi. Behind the scenes, Mr. Trump and his core national security team huddled in the White House preparing operations against Iran. Just before 10 p.m. Eastern Time, the F-15E Strike Eagle, referred to by the call signal Dude 44, was shot down by a surface-to-air missile, inadvertently putting 2 U.S. airmen on the ground in Iran. The fighter jet had been on a sortie, which would have taken it in and out of Iranian airspace. Search and rescue operations were authorized by the President and Defense Secretary just before midnight. American aircraft scoured rugged mountainous terrain for the missing service members, taking enemy fire. A dozen fighter jets were part of the daytime mission. 4 other planes were sent to jam enemy communications and conduct intelligence and reconnaissance. 5 rescue aircraft took to the sky. Warplanes taking on enemy incoming fired at Iranian convoys to block their advance. The downed pilot, call sign Dude 44A, was saved within hours, sustaining serious injuries. And there was time shortly after he ejected when Trump officials worried he would not survive. An HH-60 Pave Hawk helicopter in the convoy ferried the pilot to safety, was damaged by small arms fire, injuring crew members on board. It landed safely in friendly territory. The pilot of another damaged aircraft, an A-10 Thunderbolt, was forced to eject over the Persian Gulf and was rescued. The F-15 weapons system officer, separated from his crew member by blowing winds, was somehow deep inside enemy territory, armed with a handgun, an encrypted communication device, and a location beacon. He suffered non-life-threatening injuries when he was ejected. At the Pentagon, the colonel was designated Dust One, military speak for duty status, whereabouts unknown. Mr. Trump spent the morning in the Situation Room. On Saturday, the officer had scaled an inhospitable ridgeline cliff face and worked his way up the mountain, attempting to evade the enemy. He was 3/4 of the way up, but his communication signal was weak, so he sought higher ground. When he could, the weapons officer sent a signal. God is good. The message was decoded as God is great, which is similar to a Muslim phrase, raising concerns the American had been captured by the Iranians. Trump officials eventually verified the message was consistent with what the airman might say and was relieved to learn it wasn't a hostage situation. When they approached go time, several things happened. U.S. Central Command and the Joint Special Operations Command received some messages from the missing officer. One was a 4-digit number. We said, "What's he talking about?" an official said. They soon realized it was police code for an officer in distress or urgent assistance needed. The team could communicate with the colonel, so they asked him a question about his father that only he would know. The answer was correct. His identity was authenticated. U.S. intelligence had learned the Iranians had dog-sniffed the F-15's ejection seats and were on the ground. This alarmed the president's team, but it turns out the dogs were not effective at tracking the scent. A sunny Saturday in Washington with highs in the 80s would be golf time for the president, but he stayed inside the White House working nonstop, assessing the situation. Iranian and U.S. forces jockeyed to reach the marooned airmen first. Armed Iranians, including the IRGC, the Basij militia, and local law enforcement, combed the craggy terrain. A cash reward was offered for the capture. The team was in touch with the weapons system officer's wife and read her in on the deception plan. To scatter militants in several directions, they worked to dupe them into thinking the weapons system officer was on the move, headed south towards the border with Iran or north to the Caspian Sea or a route south out of Iran. The Pentagon planned 4 strategies to rescue the officer. Hegseth chose a fixed-wing option with 2 MC-130 transport planes. U.S. intelligence indicated the Iranians thought they were coming via helicopter. Weather was a factor. Low cloud ceiling complicated helicopters. Planners studied 2 landing zones, one 17 miles, another one 10 miles from the officer. They chose the 10-mile one on farmland. The Pentagon surged more than 150 planes in the effort, 64 fighter jets, 4 bombers, 48 refuelers, 13 rescue aircraft, 26 intelligence jamming aircraft. Some of the assets were decoys to confuse the Iranians. U.S. intelligence showed Iran was searching at night, too, using drones, but it lacked sophisticated night vision capabilities. None of the intelligence hinted the Iranians knew where the airman was. The plan was to land the fixed-winged aircraft on agricultural runway, secure the area, offload the helicopter in pieces, reassemble the helicopter. It would take 15 minutes to reassemble helicopters. Aviators would fly the Little Bird MH-6 helicopters the 7 minutes to the ridge line where the weapons officer was located and fly back another 7 minutes. They disassemble the helicopters, load them onto the MC-130s, and fly out of Iran. The Pentagon knew the colonel's general geographic location at all times, but didn't have the exact spot until John Ratcliffe of the CIA told officials they could see from miles away something moving in the vast wilderness. They kept the camera on him for 45 minutes. He wasn't moving, and they said, no, probably wrong. Then the officer stood up, and Hegseth said, go get our boy out. Godspeed. U.S. Army Lieutenant General Jonathan Braga quarterbacked the mission. In darkness, 4 little birds lifted from the airstrip bound for the mountain. Surveillance planes monitored the area. For hours, A-10s and B-1 bombers had been pounding Iranian targets, including a bunker with 50 IRGC leaders in it and another bunker sheltering a commander. The president's national security inner circle followed the developments. When Hegseth greenlit the second rescue operation, he read aloud from Exodus 33:21. Then the Lord said, there is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I pass by. Then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. Rough terrain meant the little birds couldn't land on the top. The weapons officer had to descend to a lower area down the cliff. Delta Force kept watch over the rudimentary airfield. Mr. Trump's team agonized 5 kilometers away, 3 kilometers away. Every single minute was excruciating. It took minutes for SEAL Team 6 to find the airman and get him in the copper. It was 15 minutes long. We have 44 Bravo. He's safe, Admiral Cooper told the Secretary of Defense. The 4 little birds returned to the airstrip. There was no firefight during the rescue. The 2 MC-130 transport planes were bogged down in loose soil, unable to take off. Operators on the ground usually do a soil sample. There was no time to do that before the operation. The Pentagon executed a backup plan. After checking with Mr. Trump, the U.S. bombers dropped 2,000 and 5,000-pound bombs on the aircraft. Bigger, heavier planes that had been necessary to fit the helicopters and equipment demolished them to keep them out of enemy hands. The 3 other planes exited enemy airspace and touched down in Kuwait. The second rescue mission completed before midnight, Easter. What an amazing, amazing story. What an amazing rescue. Kudos, by the way, to CBS News, to Jennifer Jacobs and James Laporta for getting the details of this from the military. Absolutely incredible, incredible details from the United States military. Mr. Trump hoped the backup planes would be able to land and take off. They came in like magic, boom, 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 one after another, he said. They were really concerned. We said, boy, if they don't get in and get out fast, and they did. The weapons service officer, Dude 44B, he was called his wife and children after landing in Kuwait to tell him he was safe. Remarkable. Remarkable what our military has done. Remarkable what they were able to pull off. And for the record, I would note only 4 Democrats in the United States Congress said anything good about it. Rory McIlroy had his press conference, an interview at the Masters. He was asked about his meal at the Masters, which is tonight. I am a picky eater, and about the only thing on his menu that I would want to eat is the steak. But he was asked why it was not more Irish. He's from Northern Ireland, and his response was, people keep asking me, why don't you go more Irish? Because I want to enjoy dinner as well. Listen, I think I'd have liked this dinner if it was more Irish. Just put some potatoes on there and I would have been happy. No one invited me into Berkman's place this Friday. One day I want to go take my son in there, but I'm taking my son to the Masters on Friday. I'm not going to be here. It is father-son time. It's expected to be 75 degrees and sunny. I will wear sunscreen so that I don't get burned. I'll make sure my son wears sunscreen. We're going to go find our friends Rick and Sally who are going to be there. My son adores them, as do I, and we're going to have fun. I love the Masters. It is remarkable. It is walking through the Garden of Eden. It is the closest I can think of to walking through the Garden of Eden. It is the most beautiful place I have been to beautiful places all over planet Earth, and I don't think I have ever been to a place as immaculate as Augusta National. It is a shrine to green grass and beautiful flowers and golf. Absolutely spectacular. You should, even if you're not a golf fan, you should spend some time watching the Masters just because it's so gorgeous. And I'm pretty sure they pipe in the bird sounds there. I'm going to come back with lots of swag. My wife has no idea what the credit card bill is going to be like. It's going to be fantastic. I just make my son leave the shop so he doesn't see the bill, so he can't tell his mom. Now, I got to tell you about Old Glory Bank. Old Glory Bank is my bank, and they can be your bank, and they should be your bank, and they're a wonderful bank. And you can go to oldglorybank.com/Eric and check them out. I respect people who show actions that are just words. It's even easier to be strategic for a company to say they support the military these days, to say they support first responders. Old Glory Bank actually does it. They put together Old Glory Protect. It's a $100,000 line-of-duty death benefit for active-duty service members and women, along with first responders and Border Patrol agents. We never want to think that the worst-case scenario is going to happen, but God forbid if something happens, we want to know that our families are going to be taken care of, and I want you to know Old Glory Bank is going to take care of the families of the military and first responders. If you're a protector serving our country, our communities in one of these roles, Old Glory Protect is free to you with an Old Glory Bank account and direct deposit. All you have to do is register. Learn more at oldglorybank.com/Eric. That's oldglorybank.com/Eric. You got that? Old Glory Bank is going to put its money where its mouth is. They're not just going to say they support the military. They're going to use Old Glory Bank Protect, a $100,000 line-of-duty death benefit for active-duty service members and first responders and Border Patrol agents. Find out more at oldglorybank.com/Eric, oldglorybank.com/ERICK. Folks, I have found a book that I like on anxiety and living a non-anxious life. And some of you know John Delony. He works with Dave Ramsey. Has a great podcast, an incredible social media presence. My wife actually put him on my radar, though I had to tell him that I kind of hate him because my wife referred to him as the cute guy who works for Dave Ramsey. We sat down the other day and recorded a conversation about anxiety and his book, A Non-Anxious Life. I spent a lot of time talking to you about it. He's actually an expert. And so I wanted to provide you the interview. And for those of you watching the video live stream, we video recorded it. So I've never done this before, but my conversation with Dr. John Delony. John, I was telling you off air before we began. So I got your non-anxious life. So between law school and seminary, I completely burned out on reading books. And every book I read is something theological these days, which is kind of funny. This was in the Christian section, our local Barnes & Noble, and not the psychology section where all the other anxiety books were. And my wife has been telling me, oh, you should follow John on Instagram. And then I got your book, and a buddy of mine who's a pastor said, books on tape is not cheating. So yours was my first audio book, which I enjoyed. Cool. And it's just a great topic. The reason I wanted to have you on is I spend a lot of time with my audience talking about anxiety, and that people get so absorbed in the headlines these days, and they forget there's actually a world in your backyard where you can actually volunteer and make the world great. And then almost ministering to myself that things are going to be okay. God's going to take care of it. And your book was just such an encouragement to me. And I was like, you know what? I talk about this all the time, but you're actually an expert in this sort of stuff. I should have you on.
Well, dude, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, it's I don't know how your brain works, having gone to both law school and seminary. That's a brain that's got to be exhausted all the time.
Yeah, pretty much. And I haven't finished seminary, but so I started doing these faith conversations on radio, and people started asking me to preach on Sunday. It's like, I've never been to seminary. So then I went to a Reformed seminary, and all the little Baptist churches were like, yeah, Reformed guy, not so sure. But I've enjoyed it, enjoyed the education, and it's been a lot of fun, but also it's given me some way to connect with listeners, I guess, on just there is a God, and he's got this. Don't worry about anxiety. But I was working my way through your book, and I like one of the things you talked about was how people don't have close friendships anymore. And I've been telling people a lot, we're so isolated after COVID. My wife actually started making me have guys over on Sunday. So I do all the cooking, and on Sunday night have guys on my front porch for bourbon, cigars, and football, like every single Sunday night.
Yeah, so good, man.
The way to kick off the weekend. But it is kind of odd to think, as my orbit of people have grown, it seems like I actually know fewer people.
Yeah, we've accidentally, and again, I'm not a big. My dad was a homicide detective growing up, and a SWAT guy in Houston back in the 70s and 80s. So he's an original OG before it was cool conspiracy theorist, right? Like he's like, I know how this thing really works. Like, he was awesome. I don't operate very much like that. I think we got here accidentally. And I think we got these amazing magic wands handed to us in 2010, 11, and 12. And instantly overnight, the way we've communicated for all of human history's changed. And we just began staring at these little devices. And we were sold this bill of goods that we can be connected to everybody all the time. And in a way we are, or we can communicate with everybody. But, man, we've disconnected ourselves just overnight. And we've created the loneliest generation in human history, surrounded by people. And here's so if I was called over somewhere to do a suicide assessment, is this person in danger of hurting themselves? One of the questions I have to answer is, does this person believe, the nerd term is perceived burdensomeness? And what that means is, does this person in their core believe that those they love, those around them, would be better off if they weren't here anymore? And if you think about it, accidentally, I don't ask my neighbor for sugar anymore. I just Instacart it. I don't ask for a ride to the airport. I just Uber. I don't ask a buddy, hey, can I borrow your mower? I'll hire somebody to come over and do that. I don't want to bother anybody. And listen, Eric, I teach on this for a living. I wrote a book on it. And 2 months ago, my wife came into the room where I have a little room over my garage where I write. And she came in about 11:30. And she's a gangster, tough West Texas just woman, man. She's tough. And she said, hey, I need to go to the ER. She said that twice in the 30 years I've known her. She needed an emergency appendectomy. And here I was in the middle of the night. I have a 15-year-old who's asleep, a 10-year-old who's asleep. And I thought, I'll just leave a note. I don't want to bother anybody. And I fell for it, right? So as a culture, we have all this access, but man, we all have this sensation in our guts that we don't want to bother anybody. We're alone.
So you tell the story. I'm thinking several years ago, woke up in the middle of the night, knew something wasn't right, and didn't want to bother anyone. Told my wife I'll be fine. Went off to the ER to find out I had blood clots in my lungs, and jeez, God forbid we bother anybody. I drove myself.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like, that's never happened in human history. And so I can text my wife 1,000 times in a day. I love you. I love you. that registers in her brain and parts of her brain as data, but it doesn't register in her body as she's safe and well and loved. And until we put these phones down and do what you're doing, which is just noble at this point, reconnect with real people on our front porch and say, hey, man, how are you? Where were you last week? I missed you. Hey, I heard you got a promotion. We're all going to celebrate you. Or I heard you're about to lose your job. We're all going to sit here and pull out our Rolodexes and see if we can, like, until you have that in your life, your body would be failing you if it let you sleep all night. It would be failing you if it wasn't ringing every alarm it has.
That's well said. One of the other things you mentioned too is on your time and freedom is knowing when to say no to, I forget exactly how you put it, but I have to tell you my greatest character flaw is I have the hardest time telling anybody no. I would rather be up all night dealing with stuff than tell someone no. And you talking about being able to disconnect and make time for yourself, it rings for me, and I struggle with it so much. I don't want to disappoint anybody.
Yeah, and I think for most of us, we have to go back to what kind of life do I want to live? And if you're married, what kind of life do me and my wife want to co-create? And I remember when we were sitting across the table from each other years ago, deciding, are we calling it? We're going to be two adults here. Or are we going to stay married? Because the marriage we had is over. I remember her in a moment of frustration. She was crying and said loudly, how do you want this house to feel when you walk in the door every day? And honestly, Eric, I had never considered that. And I vomited it up. I was like, I want it to be warm. I want you to be happy that I'm home. Like it had never occurred to me that I am living everyone else's life and everyone else's demands and everyone else's expectations and saying everything in the way that, what do I want in this silly life? And I want peace. And I want to be able to laugh with my kids. I want them to be happy when dad walks home, not all head to their rooms. And getting in the driver's seat of your own life, it begins to clarify my job on this planet is not to be a people pleaser. And if I need to go out and make sure everyone in my life is okay, and not even in my life, outside of the world, if I'm giving everybody a vote on my life, I'm the one who pays that price. And so just kind of stopping and saying, who gets a vote in my life and who do I want to become? And if you're a person of faith, who's God calling me to become and how do I live into that thing? Versus I just feel this incessant need to solve everything for everybody so I can feel like I finally have value and I'm not a burden to anybody anymore. It's exhausting.
It is. And, one of the great things, I guess, about my wife is among all the other things is she's gotten very good over the years of like, okay, you need a break, go away. And I'm not a big gambler, but I love to go to Las Vegas to shoot guns and eat. And she'll send me to off to play golf with friends and just to get out of the house because I would sit at the house and work. If I've got an addiction, it's work. I love my job. And sometimes at the expense of my family. And it's just telling myself or having my wife kick me in the butt and say, you need to go away for the weekend by yourself and just smoke cigars and hit golf balls is
well. I think that's the misnomer, especially for men. I'm like you. I'm not only addicted to work. I actually love it.
Yeah.
Like I love engaging in a problem in a project and trying to solve something. I love that. But if I am honest and I look at it as an addiction, then I have to back up. And a few years ago, I was writing a book. I was on the road a lot. I was doing my show. I was doing Dave's show. And then this thing, Dave Ramsey throws this event every year called Battle of the Bands. There's all these folks who come to Nashville to try to make it, and then they get real jobs and want insurance and want to have families. And so a lot of the most amazing world-class musicians work at Ramsey Solutions here. So he throws this incredible Battle of the Bands. I told my wife, hey, I'm sitting this one out this year. I've been playing guitar since I was a little kid. I'm sitting this one out. And she looked at me. I said, I don't have time. And she said, I'll make time. And I looked at her and said, what are you talking about? This is like once or twice a week for the next 2 months. I'm going to be practicing, staying up late. And she said, I get a better version of you when you have something that you're doing with a bunch of other guys and y'all are all playing, having fun. She said, I get a better version of you. Please go do this. And now I do stand-up comedy on like here in Nashville. There's a local club here, and it's awesome. And she says, go do that. I get a better version of you the other 6 days of the week when you go hang out with your silly comedian buddies and y'all are all talking trash to each other and having fun and telling jokes. Like, I get a better version of you. And so you and I are lucky we have good wives that are like, hey, the only way I get the best whole version of you is if you've got a gang of men and women out there that you can lean on, you can talk to, you can talk trash. And we just need that. We have to have it. And women are innately better at that. Men are terrible at it.
Yeah, very much so. And, side note, you in stand-up, I saw you doing this. I did this stage show in Atlanta last year, turning 50, and all these great stories that are completely not safe for radio. And being on stage and being able to make people laugh and tell these all true stories that are just absolutely something I could never say on radio, it was so much fun. But gosh, it also I'd never experienced something that I've done these conferences where I'm on stage for 2 days interviewing like every politician in America for like 8 hours a day. To be on stage for an hour and a half and just feel the energy just suck out of you it was a wild. I've never experienced it. It was a ton of fun, and I need to do it again. But also, was way more draining than I ever expected.
I loved it because I've been speaking professionally for 20 years, and I realized I walked off stage a year ago or 2 years ago, and I thought, oh no, I'm about to be that guy who 10 years from now is telling the same stories, doing the same thing. And I'm going to be that guy unless I make a radical change right now. And what that meant for me is I've got all my degrees, I've got all my expertise, I got my little fancy show and yada, yada. I'm going to have to go submit myself to a craft that I don't know how it works and how I'm not good at it. And it hit home last year. I did an event, and this isn't name dropping. This is just me painting a picture. I did an event. It was me and Dave Ramsey and John Maxwell and Patrick Lencioni and Nate Bargatze was on the bill. Like, it was the who's who. Jim Collins was there. I walked off stage. I did my hour on stage. I walk off, and all I could think about was the 8 minutes I had in front of 100 people 2 days later in Nashville to tell my jokes. I get so nervous. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's good for me. It's learning a new craft in middle age, and I'm making some great new friends with it. But I love finding something that still makes me really, really nervous and uncomfortable.
Folks, my interview with John continued on for quite a while longer, far longer than I can share with you with commercial breaks. We've made it available to everybody on YouTube. I wanted you to hear some of this on anxiety, though, because I spend so much time with you. And I get emails from so many of you all the time just stressed out about headlines and the like. Great guy. He's actually a doctor. He specializes in anxiety. He wrote Building a Non-Anxious Life. If you text the word engage to 33777. I'll send you a link back to the Amazon, a link for John Delony's book, Dr. John Delony, I should say, Building a Non-Anxious Life. It is the first audiobook I've ever read completely by audiobook, and then I wound up buying a physical copy of the book. And it's fantastic and very helpful. If you're struggling with anxiety, I highly recommend it. Dr. John Delony's book. If you text ENGAGE to 33777, I will send you a link back. And if you go to youtube.com/EW Erickson or just text Eric to 33777, I'll send you the link to YouTube. You can see the entire interview with John Delony on our YouTube page. You should subscribe and like and share. Great conversation with John Delony, and thank you to him for making time. We had to move heaven and earth to make it happen. It took about a month and a half of coordinating our schedules to get it done. Thanks again to John Delony for making time for me. Nice guy. He invited Christian and me up to a conference in October at the Ramsey headquarters. Looking forward to going up there in October. It's around the time of our anniversary. It's a couples retreat. So great guy. If you go to youtube.com/EW Erickson, you can get the full interview. It's the first time I have videoed an interview. It was actually a trial run for Bishop Barron, who wound up actually putting the audio in that for the Good Friday show. When we come back, was a violent incident in Indiana against a city councilman who voted for an AI data center, or data center, as some people. I say data, you say data. People are starting to get so scared of AI, they're turning violent. And you do have to note as well that the AI CEOs are making matters far worse than they should with some of their scare scenarios. Now, I got to tell you, there is some late breaking reporting from Mark Caputo at Axios that the White House believes progress has been made in negotiations between the U.S. and Iran towards a ceasefire deal before 8 o'clock tonight. But people inside the White House, as well as Israeli officials with knowledge of the situation, say it is still a long shot deal. U.S. officials said the thinking in the White House has shifted from can we get there to can we get there by 8 o'clock tonight. Failure to reach a deal by the deadline or at least make enough progress to convince Trump to extend it would lead to an unprecedented escalation of the war. The president is threatening to destroy Iran's bridges and power plants if Iran does not open the Strait of Hormuz, has mentioned other targets like water and oil infrastructure, claiming a whole civilization will die tonight. The key challenges at the moment are meeting Iran's demand for a strong guarantee that the U.S. and Israel won't just resume the war after a pause, and the slow pace of responses from Iranian leadership due to the security situation. I will tell you, the Wall Street Journal is reporting Iran's cut off direct communications after Trump's threats, and the New York Times says Iran has walked away from the deal. I have had a sneaking suspicion all along that the president really didn't want to cooperate with the Iranians, in large part because the president has had a 40-year-old position to eliminate Iran. So why would he change his mind after 40 years of saying this regime needs to be eliminated? I don't know. By the way, I got to tell you guys about my Perfectly Snug mattress topper because so let me just be real honest with you on the mattress topper thing. Perfectly Snug, as we head into summer, wants me to tell you it is like an air conditioner for your bed. And it is. It doesn't use water. Some of those really expensive systems use water recirculation, and it links. And Perfectly, I think if I had one, I'd wake up in the middle of the night needing to use the bathroom all the time. Perfectly Snug uses fans, and it works. In fact, I can turn it on the air conditioner setting on high, and the sheets inflate because there's so much cool air coming out. It just uses fans to recirculate. But they want me to tell you about the air conditioning part, and it does work. It will cool you down. I have of late been using the heater because it also has a heater, and I hurt my back doing deadlifts, strained a muscle, and every night by the time I go to bed, my back muscles are tired and hurting, and it's like having a heating pad. You know how you put a heating pad in the bed, though, and it's really uncomfortable because it doesn't feel right? The Perfectly Snug mattress is just a part of the bed. It's fantastic. It's way better than a heating pad. Go to perfectlysnug.com/Eric. Save up to $280. Perfectlysnug.com/Eric. Perfectlysnug.com/ERICK. You can thank me later.